just government jobs. But these are people who are teaching our kids. These are folks who are rushing into burning buildings to save our families, putting their lives on the line. Government jobs? But that is the ideology that the other side has been bringing to every problem out here for years now. And that's the choice that we've got in this election. So, look, those young people, they're going to succeed. But we've got to make sure that we make it easier for them as opposed to harder for them to succeed. Ultimately what's going to bring about their success is their determination and their talents and their pluck and their willingness to stick to it. But, we can give them a hand up. We can make sure that college is affordable. We can make sure that, they're able to stay on their parents' health insurance till they're 26 if the first job they get out of school doesn't have health insurance. We can make sure that they're not cheated the first time they buy their home, because now we've got a consumer finance protection agency that's going to monitor mortgage brokers and bank practices so that people don't have to get tricked because of fine print. These are just basic things that we can do. If they decide they want to open a business, we can make sure that they can get some financing and that they don't have to pay capital gains on their startup business. These little things add up to big things. It means that they can focus their energy on their dreams and their vision and what they're trying to build, and not spend all their time constantly just worrying about, am I going to be able to go to school or not? That should be a given in this country, because it's good for all of us, not just for these young people individually. Okay? How are we doing on time? I want to make sure that I'm not. What last question? I've got to. You're going to refer to him? Okay, you're going to defer to him. Well, he is a good-looking young man. I got to admit. You wanted to hear from him. I understand. All right, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. My name is Andrew Cavalier. I'm his son. Got a couple questions for you. One really hits hard for me. Getting a little emotional here. My father, being a veteran, we appreciate everything that he's done for the country. And, obviously the VA does a lot for my father.
Yeah, we love your dad.
Yeah.
Yeah, we appreciate what he's done.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I mean, the reason I get emotional is because, well, unfortunately, at the VA sometimes, he doesn't get the care and the service that he should.
Right.
I mean, he sacrificed his body. I mean, over 17 surgeries that he's had.
Right.
I really didn't want to do this on TV.
That's all right.
But, I see it. He put his blood, his sweat, and his tears into this country, and doesn't always get the type of, care that he deserves. Because, and I just want to ask, I mean, do you have any plan for that? There's obviously lots of veterans out there.
Right.
Feel the same way, not getting the treatments that they deserve. It's not just the medications, it's really being treated like a human.
Right.
And I mean, that's kind of the issue that I have is, we put in our taxpayer dollars, and, I have a small business myself. We help provide people with, legal services, stuff like that, having access to their rights. But when you can't afford it, I mean, we're forced to, just basically, settle for what we got because of the fact that that's all we could afford.
Well, let me, first of all, you don't have to apologize for being emotional about your dad who served our country as a Marine, man. That's, I get emotional when I think about our young men and women and our veterans who have served this country with such bravery and courage. We have a sacred trust for people who put on the uniform of the United States. They serve us. They're willing to put their lives on the line. And that means that when they come back, we've got to serve them. Now, here's the good news. First of all, I've got what I think is one of the finest, if not the finest, secretaries of Veterans Affairs ever, General Rick Shinseki, who himself is a disabled veteran. And this guy just thinks day and night about how are we going to make sure that veteran services are provided in a timely, effective, respectful fashion. All right, so that's point number one. Point number two, we actually, even in the midst of this very difficult budget situation that we're in, we have increased over the last 2 years funding for veterans more than any time in the last 30 years. More than any time in the last 30 years. And the reason we did it was because a lot of VA facilities had gotten outdated. The backlog in terms of folks trying to get medical services or getting their claims processed had just gotten ridiculous. You had over 1 million young people who had served in Iraq and now Afghanistan who had come back, and they've got new problems like, well, they're not new problems, but now we're much more effective at diagnosing post-traumatic stress disorder, traumatic brain injury. They weren't getting services. We've got women who are now serving in a much more dangerous situation in a lot of these theaters, and yet a lot of VA facilities still did not have special services for women and their special needs as they return. So we are in the process of investing more in the VA and reforming how business is done at the VA than at any time in the last 30 years. Now, we've still got a ways to go, but this is, again, an example of where, come November, we've got to start making some choices. Because if, for example, we give tax breaks to millionaires and billionaires that cost us $700 billion that we don't have, that money has to come from somewhere. And, you know, we've got to be able to provide for our veterans. I'd rather choose veterans. I'd rather choose these young people who are looking for scholarships. Homeless veterans. I mean, the notion that we've got somebody who served our country and they're now on the streets, they don't have a house. So we've said we're going to have zero tolerance for homeless veterans. We are going to do everything we can to make sure that every single person who has served our country, that they've got proper medical care and they've got a roof over their heads. And oftentimes that means counseling, and the irony is if you make the investments early, then it turns out that they're less expensive over the long term. So this is something that you're right to be emotional about, and I think we should all be emotional about it. And we're grateful to your dad for his service, and we just need to remind ourselves that there are millions of folks across the country who deserve that same kind of respect, and we've got to meet our obligations to them. One last point I'll make about veterans, because it ties in with the overall theme of education. Working with our terrific members of Congress here, we were able to pass the post-9/11 GI Bill, which means that this generation of veterans is going to be able to benefit the same way my grandfather benefited when he came back from World War II, that he was going to be able to get his college education paid for. And by the way, we made it transferable to the spouse